The repair dock at Station 9 buzzed with its usual chaos of machinery and mixed species. Rel, a blue-skinned merchant captain, stood before his ship with 4 arms crossed against his chest, watching various mechanics walk past his vessel without giving it a second look. His credit account was running low, and most repair shops wouldn't even consider working with someone who couldn't pay premium rates. The ship itself wasn't in terrible shape. It just needed some basic maintenance and a few replacement parts. But in the standardized Galactic Alliance repair system, even minor fixes came with major price tags. "That's a Mark 7 propulsion system, isn't it?" A voice came from behind him. "Those things are solid, but they run hot in the secondary coils." Rel turned to find a human standing there, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. The human was wearing a worn jumpsuit with various tools hanging from a belt around his waist. His name patch read Tom. "Yes, it is," Rel replied, surprised by the human's knowledge. Most humans were seen as newcomers to space travel, their technology considered primitive by galactic standards. "How did you know?" Tom walked around the ship, his eyes scanning every detail. "I've worked on a few. They're good engines, but the Alliance designs everything to be replaced rather than fixed. It's wasteful if you ask me." Rel's inner eyelids blinked in curiosity. "You've worked on Alliance ships. I thought humans weren't certified for high-grade repairs." Tom laughed, the sound echoing across the dock. "Official certification isn't everything. Sometimes the best solutions come from thinking outside the box." He knocked on the hull with his knuckles, listening to the sound. "Tell you what, I can fix this up for you, maybe even make it run better than new." "With human tools?" Rel couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. "And I should mention my credits are limited at the moment." "Tools are tools," Tom shrugged, pulling out a small scanner from his belt. "And as for payment, we could work something out. Maybe you could carry some cargo for me on your next few runs. I've got some parts that need moving between stations." Rel's antenna twitched with interest. Bartering was common among his people, but most Alliance stations insisted on credit-only transactions. This human's flexibility was intriguing. "What exactly would you do to my ship?" Rel asked, his curiosity winning over caution. Tom's eyes lit up. He pulled out a tablet and started sketching. "Well, first, those secondary coils I mentioned. I can modify them with a cooling system we developed for Earth's desert racing vehicles. Then there's the fuel injection. Alliance ships waste about 15% of their fuel due to standardized flow rates. I can fix that with some customization." As Tom spoke, his hands moved quickly across the tablet, drawing modifications that seemed both impossible and somehow logical. Rel found himself leaning in, fascinated despite his reservations. "This isn't standard," Rel said carefully. "Standard is boring," Tom replied with a grin. "Standard is what gets you standard results. But if you want your ship to really perform," he let the sentence hang in the air. Around them, other mechanics and captains were starting to stare. A few were whispering, probably betting on how quickly this would end in disaster. Humans were known for their crazy ideas, after all. But something in Tom's confident smile and practical knowledge made Rel want to take a chance. Maybe it was the way he talked about the ship like it was more than just a collection of parts, or maybe it was the genuine excitement in his voice when he described the improvements he could make. "If this works," Rel said slowly, "it could change how the whole Alliance thinks about ship maintenance." "When it works," Tom corrected, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement. "So, do we have a deal?" Rel looked at his ship, then at the human's outstretched hand. With a deep breath and a feeling that he might be either making the best or worst decision of his life, he reached out and shook it. He had no idea just how much that handshake would change everything. The next morning, Tom walked around Rel's ship with a determined look in his eyes. He carried an old toolbox in one hand and what looked like a modified scanner in the other. Rel followed him nervously, all 4 hands fidgeting with worry. "Please be careful with your equipment," Rel said, watching Tom press various devices against the ship's hull. "This vessel is all I have, "Trust me," Tom replied, tapping the hull and listening to the sound. "I treat every ship like it's my own." He stopped at a panel and whistled. "Now that's interesting." "What's interesting?" Rel moved closer, his antenna twitching. Tom pointed to a series of power conduits visible through the maintenance panel. "See how they route all the power through these standardized pathways? It's like forcing a river through a tiny canal when it could flow much more freely." He pulled out a small computer and started making notes. Other mechanics in the dock were now openly watching them, some shaking their heads, others whispering among themselves. A group of green-skinned dock workers had even started a betting pool on how long before the human broke something. "Your engine," Tom continued, "is running at about 60% of what it could do. The Alliance built in all these limiters and safety redundancies. It's like putting a governor on a racing car." Rel blinked his inner eyelids rapidly. "But those safety systems are essential for space travel. Everyone knows that." "Everyone knows wrong," Tom said, climbing up onto a maintenance ladder to check the upper hull. "Humans learned something important during our first steps into space. Sometimes the best safety system is raw performance. If you can dodge faster than the other ship can shoot, you don't need triple-layered shields." He opened another panel, and his eyes widened. "Oh, this is perfect. Your power core has universal adapters. That means we can modify the input and output without replacing the whole system." Rel felt his stomach twist. "Modify? The dealer said those parts should never be modified." "The dealer wants to sell you new parts," Tom replied, making more notes. "Look here." He pulled up a holographic display showing the ship's engine systems. "Right now, your ship is like a person trying to run a race in heavy winter clothes. Sure, it's safe and warm, but it can't move freely. What we're going to do is give it proper running gear." Tom's enthusiasm was infectious, and Rel found himself leaning in to look at the display more closely. The human's explanations, while unorthodox, made a strange kind of sense. "And you're sure this will work?" Rel asked. "Let me show you something." Tom pulled out his tablet and brought up images of old Earth vehicles. "See these? They're called hot rods. Back on Earth, people took normal cars and transformed them into something amazing. We're going to do the same thing to your ship, just in space." As Tom outlined his plans, Rel noticed something surprising. Unlike the Alliance mechanics who treated ships like identical units on an assembly line, Tom spoke about each part as if it were unique and special. He didn't just see machinery, he saw potential. "We'll start with the cooling systems," Tom said, already pulling tools from his box. "Then move on to power distribution. And finally, the engine control systems. By the time we're done, this ship will do things the Alliance says are impossible." A small crowd had gathered now, watching the human work with a mixture of horror and fascination. An official-looking alien in a dock supervisor's uniform started heading their way. "Well," Rel said, watching the supervisor approach, "I suppose we better get started before someone tries to stop us." Tom grinned, already elbow-deep in the ship's systems. "That's the spirit. Hand me that wrench, would you? We're about to show the galaxy what happens when human creativity meets alien technology." As Rel passed the tool, he couldn't help but wonder, was he about to witness a miracle or the most expensive mistake of his life? 3 days into the modifications, Rel's ship looked like it had been torn apart by space pirates. Parts lay scattered across the dock floor in organized chaos that only Tom seemed to understand. The human moved between different sections of the ship, connecting new systems that had never been meant to work together. "Is it supposed to look like this?" Rel asked, picking up what looked like half of his power converter. "It always looks worst in the middle," Tom replied from inside an access panel, his voice echoing. "Like making an omelet. You have to break some eggs first." A sharp buzzing sound came from inside the ship, followed by a shower of sparks. Several alien observers jumped back, but Tom just laughed. "That's exactly what we wanted to happen," he called out. "The old systems are finally talking to the new ones." Rel watched as Tom emerged from the panel, covered in grease but grinning. In his hands, he held what looked like a modified Earth car part attached to several glowing alien components. "What exactly is that?" Rel asked, his antenna twitching nervously. "This." Tom held up the strange device. "It's a turbocharger from a desert racing truck, modified to work with your ship's plasma intake. It'll boost your power output by at least 40%. A group of Alliance engineers had gathered nearby, pointing at Tom's modifications and shaking their heads in disapproval. "That's not possible," one of them called out. "You can't mix primitive Earth technology with Alliance systems." Tom just smiled and kept working. "Watch me," he muttered under his breath, then turned to Rel. "Your ship's about to have something no other Alliance vessel has. Soul." Hour after hour, Tom added more modifications. He installed cooling systems designed for Earth's most extreme racing vehicles, modified to handle the intense heat of space travel. The ship's control panel now sported both standard Alliance displays and what Tom called analog gauges that showed real-time performance readings. "See these?" Tom pointed to the new gauges. "They'll tell you exactly how the ship's feeling. Digital readouts are fine, but sometimes you need to feel the pulse of your vessel." Rel watched in fascination as Tom connected a series of tubes and wires that bypassed several Alliance safety systems. "Isn't that dangerous?" he asked. "Less dangerous than letting a computer make all your decisions," Tom replied. "These new systems will give you direct control, better reaction time, better feel for the ship. It's like the difference between watching a dance and being the dancer." The dock supervisor had given up trying to stop them after Tom showed him the safety calculations. Now he just watched from a distance, recording everything on his tablet, probably for some report to his superiors. "Almost done with the major systems," Tom announced, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Now comes the fun part, teaching your ship how to use its new muscles." He pulled out a small device that looked like it had been built from spare parts. "This is the brain of the operation. It'll help all these different systems work together. I call it the Harmony Module." "You invented this?" Rel asked, examining the device. "Had to. Nobody's ever tried to make Earth and Alliance tech work together quite like this before." Tom carefully installed the module into the ship's main control panel. It's like being a translator between two very different languages. As the sun set over the space station, the scattered parts had slowly transformed back into a ship, but one that looked unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. Earth-style cooling vents blended with alien metal, creating an aggressive yet graceful appearance. "Tomorrow," Tom said, patting the ship's hull, "we fire her up and see what she can do. Better get some rest. It's going to be an interesting day." Rel looked at his transformed ship, wondering if he should be excited or terrified. Probably both, he decided. After all, he was about to become the first alien captain of a hot-rodded spaceship. The morning of the integration test arrived with a series of unexpected problems. Warning lights flashed across the ship's control panel, and strange noises came from the engine room. Tom stood in the middle of it all, scratching his head while looking at his diagnostic tools. "That's not supposed to happen," he muttered, watching as the ship's new power core pulsed with an odd purple glow instead of its usual blue. Rel paced back and forth, all four arms waving in distress. "I knew it. Alliance technology and human modifications don't mix. We've ruined my ship." "Not ruined," Tom corrected, already pulling tools from his belt. "We're just teaching two different languages to sing the same song. Sometimes there's a few wrong notes at first." A crowd had gathered to watch the inevitable failure. Alliance engineers stood with their arms crossed, smirking as Tom crawled under the control panel. The betting pool on when the ship would explode had grown quite large. "The problem," Tom's voice came from under the panel, "is that your Alliance systems think our Earth modifications are errors. They keep trying to correct them. We need to convince them to work together instead of fighting each other." A shower of sparks erupted from the engine room, followed by a loud bang. Several observers jumped back, but Tom remained calm. "Actually, that's good news," he said. emerging with a grin. The systems are talking to each other now. They just need to learn to be friendlier about it. Rel watched nervously as Tom opened his toolbox and pulled out what looked like an old Earth circuit board covered in new modifications. "What's that?" "This," Tom said proudly, "is something I call a friendship bridge. It's going to help your Alliance computer understand that our Earth modifications are friends, not enemies." He carefully installed the device, his hand steady despite the increasing noise from the engine. The purple glow began to fade, slowly returning to its normal blue color. "See," Tom pointed to the gauges. "The power levels are stabilizing. Your ship is learning to trust its new parts." A young Alliance engineer broke away from the crowd and approached them, her curiosity obviously stronger than her skepticism. "But how are you managing the quantum fluctuations? The standard protocols don't allow for this kind of integration." Tom smiled and waved her closer. "Come here, I'll show you something interesting." He pointed to a series of new gauges he had installed. "We're not fighting the fluctuations, we're dancing with them. These gauges show us the rhythm, and these controls let us adjust our steps." The engineer's eyes widened as she understood. That's brilliant. Unorthodox and completely against regulations, but brilliant. More problems arose throughout the day, but Tom met each one with the same calm creativity. When the navigation system refused to accept commands from the new control interface, he built a makeshift translator from spare parts. When the artificial gravity started hiccuping, he adjusted it using principles borrowed from Earth's old spinning carnival rides. "The key," he explained to Rel and the growing crowd of curious onlookers, "is to stop thinking about what's supposed to work and start thinking about what could work." As the station's artificial day cycle drew to a close, the ship's systems finally began working in harmony. The engine hummed with a new sound, not quite Alliance, not quite Earth, but something uniquely its own. "Tomorrow," Tom announced, closing his toolbox, "we do the first full power test. If anyone wants to watch, I'd stand behind the safety line. This ship's about to do things that aren't in any Alliance manual." Rel looked at his ship, which now bore the marks of both human ingenuity and alien technology. "Will it be safe?" he asked. Tom grinned, patting the ship's hull. "Safe? Probably not by Alliance standards. But it'll be amazing. And sometimes that's better than safe." The morning of the test run arrived with an electric atmosphere in the dock. Word had spread throughout Station 9, and aliens of all species gathered to watch. The betting pool had grown so large that the dock supervisor had to officially pretend he didn't notice it. Tom stood at the ship's main control panel, running through his final checks. The new gauges he'd installed showed readings that would have given any Alliance inspector a heart attack. "Ready for power-up sequence?" he asked Rel, who stood nervously nearby. "I'm not sure," Rel replied, his antenna drooping slightly. "Maybe we should run more tests first." "Sometimes you just have to trust your ship," Tom said, his hands moving across the controls. "And right now, your ship is ready to show everyone what it can do." The engine came to life with a sound unlike anything the station had ever heard, a deep, powerful rumble that made the deck plates vibrate. Several Alliance engineers rushed to their scanning equipment, their eyes widening at the readings. "That's impossible," one shouted, smacking his scanner. "These power levels can't be right." Tom smiled, watching his gauges. "Your scanner's working fine. It's just measuring something new." He turned to Rel. "Want to see what all those Earth modifications can really do?" Before Rel could answer, a dock official pushed through the crowd, waving a datapad. "Stop this immediately. These power readings exceed all safety regulations by at least 300%. "Actually," Tom replied calmly, "they exceed them by 457%. But that's because your regulations never considered this kind of integration possible." He pointed to his custom safety systems. "Look here. Triple redundancy on all critical systems, emergency cutoffs that respond faster than Alliance standard, and cooling systems that can handle twice this load. The official sputtered, looking at the readings. But the regulations clearly state. The regulations, Tom interrupted, were written for ships that crawl through space like careful turtles. This ship is now a cheetah. Different rules apply. He turned back to the controls and began the full power-up sequence. The ship's new systems came online one by one, each adding its voice to the growing symphony of power. The blue glow from the engine room now pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. "Time for the real test," Tom announced. He looked at Rel. "Want to take her for a spin?" Rel's inner eyelids blinked rapidly. "In the dock?" "Not quite," Tom grinned. He pressed a button, and a holographic display showed a test course he'd programmed just outside the station. "We'll do a simple run, just enough to show what she can do." The crowd pressed against the safety barriers as Tom and Rel boarded the ship. Through the viewport, they could see dozens of aliens recording with their devices, ready to document either a miracle or a disaster. Inside the cockpit, Tom guided Rel through the new controls. "Remember, she's not just a machine anymore. She's got spirit now. You need to feel her rhythm." Rel placed his hands on the controls, and his eyes widened. The ship seemed to pulse under his touch, responding to the slightest movement. It felt alive. "Ready?" Tom asked, his hand hovering over the main power control. Rel took a deep breath, then nodded. "Ready." The ship lifted off with impossible grace, hovering in the dock for a moment before sliding smoothly out into space. The watching crowd rushed to the observation windows, pressed against the glass to see what would happen next. "Now," Tom said with a grin, "let me show you what happens when human hot rod culture meets Alliance technology." He reached for the controls, and the ship's engine note changed from a rumble to a roar. The test run was about to begin, and nothing in the Alliance's carefully regulated space lanes would ever be the same again. The modified ship hung in space like a predator ready to pounce. Through the observation windows of Station 9, hundreds of aliens watched with a mixture of fear and excitement. The betting pool had shifted from, "When will it explode?" to "What impossible thing will it do first?" Inside the cockpit, Rel gripped the controls with two hands, while his other two hands hovered over the new emergency switches Tom had installed. The ship hummed around them, its blend of Alliance and Earth technology creating a sound that made his antenna tingle. "Ready for the first real test?" Tom asked, checking his gauges one last time. "We'll start with something simple, just a basic acceleration run." Rel nodded nervously. "What should I expect?" "Expect the impossible," Tom grinned. "Now, push that throttle forward slowly, just like I showed you." Rel did as instructed. The ship moved forward smoothly at first, then with increasing speed. The stars began to blur slightly at the edges of the viewport. "Good," Tom said. "Now, see that red button I installed? The one labeled NOS. The one you said I shouldn't touch until I was ready. That's the one. Push it." Rel pressed the button, and the universe seemed to hiccup. The ship leaped forward with acceleration that should have been impossible. The inertial dampeners, modified with Earth racing technology, kept them from feeling the worst of it, but Rel still found himself pressed back into his seat. "By the great void," he gasped. "Is this safe?" "Safer than the old way," Tom replied, watching his gauges with satisfaction. "Look at your speed readings." Rel's inner eyelids blinked rapidly as he read the numbers. They were moving at nearly twice the speed that an Alliance ship of this size should be capable of reaching. "Now for the fun part," Tom said. "Let's show them what those new maneuvering thrusters can do." He guided Rel through a series of turns and spins that would have torn a normal ship apart. The modified vessel responded like a living thing, dancing through space with impossible grace and speed. Back at the station, the observation deck had gone silent. Alliance engineers stared at their readings in disbelief. Several of them were already taking notes, their earlier skepticism replaced by professional curiosity. "Want to try something really impressive?" Tom asked. "See that freighter ahead? I bet we can fly a complete circle around it before it can turn halfway around. Rel's antenna perked up. The freighter in question was one of the newest Alliance models, known for its advanced maneuvering capabilities. Its captain was watching their display with obvious interest. "Show me," Rel said, his earlier fear now replaced by excitement. Tom talked him through the sequence. The ship responded instantly, its new systems working in perfect harmony. They looped around the freighter not once but twice, moving so quickly that they left a visible distortion in the space behind them. The freighter's captain sent an immediate communication. "How is this possible? Our sensors can't even track your movement properly." "That's the beauty of it," Tom replied over the comm. "Sometimes the best technology is the kind your sensors can't quite understand." They spent the next hour putting the ship through its paces, demonstrating maneuvers that violated several laws of physics and quite a few Alliance regulations. The ship didn't just move through space. It owned it, commanded it, danced with it. Finally, they brought the ship back to dock, settling it gently into place with a precision that even the most advanced Alliance vessels would envy. As they powered down the systems, Rel noticed his hands were shaking with excitement. "So," Tom said, patting the control panel affectionately, "what do you think of your hot-rodded ship now?" Rel looked at the crowds gathering outside, at the flashing cameras and excited faces, at the Alliance engineers already rushing forward with questions. "I think," he replied slowly, "that the galaxy isn't ready for what humans can do to a spaceship." 1 month after the historic test flight, Station 9's repair dock looked very different. Where once there had been empty bays and bored mechanics, now there was a constant stream of ships waiting for what had become known as the human touch. Tom stood in his new workshop, surrounded by a mixture of Alliance parts and Earth modifications. He had 3 alien apprentices now, each learning the art of combining human ingenuity with alien technology. The betting pool had transformed into an investment fund for new modifications. "I still can't believe how things have changed," Rel said, walking into the workshop. Its ship sat proudly in the main bay, its modified systems having inspired a whole new style of space travel. "Neither can the Alliance regulators," Tom laughed, holding up a new certification that officially recognized Earth-enhanced modifications as a legitimate form of ship improvement. "They had to create a whole new category just for us." Around them, other aliens worked on their ships, applying lessons learned from Earth's long history of mechanical modification. A group of young engineers huddled around a holographic display, studying the principles of turbocharging applied to plasma drives. "Your last cargo run set a new speed record," Tom mentioned, wiping his hands on a rag. "How's the ship handling?" Rel's antenna wiggled happily. "Like a dream. The other merchants can't believe it when I tell them my delivery times. I've had to start charging premium rates because everyone wants their cargo on the fastest ship in the sector." A loud cheer erupted from nearby, where an Alliance cruiser captain was testing his newly modified engines for the first time. The sound of raw power echoed through the dock, making several older engineers cover their ears in shock. "You've started something big," Rel observed, watching the excited crowd. "Even the military is starting to take notice." Tom nodded, looking at the various ships in his dock. Each one represented a perfect blend of Alliance technology and human creativity. "That's because we're not just making ships faster, we're making them better. Every modification teaches us something new about what's possible." A group of alien children pressed their faces against the workshop's viewport, watching in awe as Tom's apprentices installed a modified Earth-style supercharger into a diplomatic vessel. Their parents, once skeptical of human technology, now pointed proudly at the improvements. "Remember when everyone thought the ship would explode?" Rel asked, his inner eyelids blinking with amusement. "Now they're disappointed when things don't explode a little," Tom grinned. "Speaking of which, ready to try those new modifications we discussed?" Rel's antenna perked up with interest. "The ones based on Earth muscle cars? Won't that violate about 50 Alliance safety regulations?" 63, actually," Tom replied cheerfully. But I already filed the paperwork for another new category. They're calling it Extreme Performance Modifications. We're writing the rules as we go. Outside the station, ships zipped past the observation windows with new grace and speed. Each one carried a piece of human innovation, a touch of Earth's long tradition of making machines perform beyond their intended limits. You know what the best part is? Tom said, watching a newly modified freighter execute a perfect high-speed turn. We're just getting started. Wait until I show everyone what we can do with the ideas I got from Earth's old racing submarines. Rel's antenna twitched nervously. Maybe we should master space first, before we start applying underwater racing concepts. Where's your sense of adventure? Tom laughed, already sketching new modifications on his tablet. After all, if there's one thing humans know how to do, it's taking something good and making it amazing. As they walked back to the workshop, another cheer erupted as another ship roared to life with its new modifications. In the space lanes above, ships streaked past with new confidence and speed, each one a testament to what could happen when human creativity met alien technology. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how Tom liked it.